Compositional semantics. What else we talk about when we talk about meaning. Part 2. Subjects and objects. When we talk about syntax, we went over what a subject and an object is. So a syntactic subject is the NP daughter of a sentence. It's this thing here. We can similarly define a semantic subject. A semantic subject is the argument daughter of a proposition. Syntactic object is the NP daughter of a VP. And the semantic object is the argument daughter of a predicate. Okay, so now we see some really close alignment. And generally, the syntactic subject and semantic subject align, but not always. Passives, for example, lead to a syntax-semantics mismatch. So when we think about the active sentence, he saw her, there we're going to see the two trees, the syntactic tree and the semantic tree, are going to line up pretty much exactly, just different terminology. However, when we passivize that transitive verb saw, we're going to get a different structure syntactically. So the way the passives work is that you take a transitive verb and essentially turn it into an intransitive verb by adding that auxiliary be and then putting it in the past participle form of the verb, so it becomes seen. And then you've got the optional preposition phrase, the by phrase, that includes the semantic subject. So essentially what you're doing is promoting the semantic object to the position of the syntactic subject. So in syntax, then, we're going to have these two different, very different structures, and you can see how different they are, but they're going to correlate with exactly the same semantics. The semantics doesn't change in this case. So what we see is what we call a syntax-semantics mismatch. If we didn't ever find a mismatch like that, we would have no call to say that there's a difference between syntax and semantics. I want to go further, though, and recognize that there are two types of subjects. So there's the subject of an intransitive verb or a one-place predicate. We'll call that the I subject. There's also the subject of a transitive verb or a two-place predicate. We'll call that a T subject. So what that means then is that there are going to be three main syntactic positions for noun phrases. There's going to be an I subject, a T subject, and an object. And every language needs to be able to distinguish between a T subject and an object, right? So there has to be a way to know which is the semantic subject and which is the semantic object. That's essential. So, for example, in English, we need to know that there's a difference between saying the bear ate a hunter and a hunter ate the bear, right? And we do it by word order primarily in English. That word order makes a big difference. In other languages, we might use morphology to indicate the difference between the two sentences. An I subject, of course, doesn't need any distinguishing, right? Since there's only going to be one argument, then you don't have to be able to tell, to distinguish it from any other argument, since there is only one. The bear ate. There's a principle of economy that operates in languages. What I mean by this is that since we've got a way of representing the T subject and a way of representing the object, then we might as well, that I subject that doesn't need to be distinguished, that one we can represent in one of two ways. We can either use the same representation as we would use for the T subject, or we could use the same representation that we would use for the object. And we find that those two systems exist in different languages. So we call the first one the nominative accusative system. That's what English uses. So our T subjects and our I subjects always come before the verbs in English, and then the objects come after the verbs. Hungarian, likewise, is a nominative accusative language, as are most European languages. But there are languages that are called ergative absolutive languages, where the T subject stands on its own, and the I subject and the object take the same form. So there are American Indian languages, for example, that follow that ergative absolutive system. So I already mentioned that English is a nominative accusative language. So for example, the bear ate a hunter, we've got that T subject marked by putting it before the verb. We also, with the I subject, put it before the verb. The bear ate. In Hungarian, it's not the position that's important. It's the marking on the noun phrase. And in fact, the last word of the noun phrase has to have a T on it if it's an object. If it's a subject, whether it's a T subject or an I subject, it's unmarked. Basically, it doesn't have any suffix on it. So, for example, the bear ate a hunter in Hungarian would be a medve evett egy vadaszt. But we could also say egy vadaszt evett a medve, and that would mean the same thing. The word order is irrelevant. And I want you to notice that when we have the intransitive eat, evet, same verb, but in this case it's being used as an intransitive verb, you still get a medve. And in fact, you could also reverse that word order and say evet a medve, and that would mean the same thing. So it's not the word order in Hungarian, but it's still nominative accusative because the I subject and the T subject are treated identically. Now, the other possibility is that you've got the I subject and the object treated the same. That would be an ergative absolutive language, such as gerbil. So I don't think I can actually pronounce the words in this very well, so I'm not even going to try. But what I want you to notice is that in the first one, Johnny hid the money, money has an absolutive suffix, and Johnny, Yanni, has an ergative suffix. So Yanni is the semantic subject, money is the semantic object, and hide is our two-place predicate. Okay, so Johnny hid the money. But when we've got a one-place predicate, come, Johnny came, in that case, Johnny takes the absolutive suffix, meaning that in that case, when it's a one-place predicate, it acts similarly to the object of a two-place predicate. That's an ergative absolutive system. And the point of all of this is that languages are going to find different syntactic means of identifying unequivocally what is the subject, the semantic subject, and what is the semantic object. But how they do it syntactically can differ from language to language. The main thing is that we arrive ultimately at that semantic representation of a proposition and what are its arguments and what position those arguments are taking, whether it's the semantic subject or the semantic object.